Well, hello and welcome to episode 493 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show, could the search for MH370 be starting up again? One Airbus gets shot at again, and Nev takes a look at probably the most luxurious airliner in the world. And in the military, Boeing might be making a few more quid, and the German Navy shoots at something it really shouldn't have. Joining me this week, across in the PTUK Master Suite studios, it is, of course, the king of all thing insurance. It's Matt Smith.
I don't know if I like that one. No. No. King of all things, slidey and fadey. That's what I've decided. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Slidey and fadey, yes.
Indeed. How are you? I've not been able to come and see you all week.
No, I know. This
Rude.
week has been honestly. I think I said to you the other day, didn't I, Matt? Since we've come back from the trip, it's been incredibly busy at work. I think
Indeed.
I've been catching up on everything that's happened whilst we were in Dublin.
Oh dear. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
But good news is, tomorrow afternoon, my dinner hour is free.
Is it? All right. I'll bear that in mind. I might not want to come now.
I'm going to be heading for some sausage rolls from the.
Oh, lovely. Ah, the lovely Sue. Ah, yes.
Yes.
She's an institution in her own right.
And joining us across the hills, the dales, the rivers, the lakes, the beautiful Buckinghamshire countryside, it is, of course, our connoisseur of all things BA and Seat 1A. It's Neville Bounds.
Well, it was the beautiful countryside until HS2 chewed it all up, but that's a subject for another show, I'm sure. But,
Some political rambling somewhere, yes. Absolutely.
But no, here we are. We've made it back, and what a great time we had over the last few days in Ireland. Superb hospitality. Shame about the weather, but we'll show you some of the footage from that a bit later on. But no, we're all back in one piece, and yeah, great. Had a fantastic time there, and yeah, can't wait to share our stories with you later on.
Yes, indeed. A very good time had by all of us. And also joining us, he's lurking in the background. He's the guy who's been doing a lot of work this week, putting together all the stories for the show this week. And I know his microphone is a bit dubious, but it does work. We can still hear him. Hello, Nick.
Oh, hello. Yes, I'm just lurking this week.
He's lurking.
Just come to check on all those beautiful faces made for radio, and make sure you're all happy and all back safely from Ireland.
Rude.
Well, thanks, Nick. He's going to be keeping an eye on us. Well done, as always. And Super Sub number one. He's back again. From his pub. What I should say is live from his pub. It is, of course, our very own Andy.
Hello. Back again. I'll try not to go off on tangents this week. I realised last time I went off on several tangents on each story. So
no, we like your tangents.
I could say, don't you dare. Absolutely. You ramble away, my friend. Please do.
Yeah, I should, like Nev's corner, I should get a ramble section as well.
Yeah, leave it with us. We'll build you some form of stinger in readiness. Don't worry.
How's things, Andy? How's life?
Yeah, good. It's been a few weeks since I've been on, hasn't it? I was on holiday, then I was in Milano last week, testing stuff in the simulator. Yeah, now I'm into the boring phase of producing all of the documentation to go with it for the regulators. But all is well.
Exciting times. How was the holiday, by the way?
Oh, lovely.
Excellent. Yeah, indeed. Our little trip away, by the way, I know we will be talking about it later, but I've now found an unhealthy desire to drink more Guinness, which I do feel is a worry.
How was the flight over, Andy?
Smooth, lovely, nice. It was on a 737, which is a shame, but...
Oh, well.
Yes.
I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I have stories about 737s as well, Carlos, but there we go, yes.
So we're going to say a big hello to everyone in the chat room this evening. Starting off at the top of the list, Mazoos. Hello to local listener Mazoos. Good to see you in there. Hobby Time is also in there this week. Richard Adams is wondering what we're all going to be droning on about tonight. Thanks for that. David Michael is in there over in Adelaide. I think he should still be in there. John is in there as well. Hello to John Falk. Good to see you in there. Watching on his mobile apparently. So, yeah. Richard E. Flagg, hello to you as well. Great to see you in the chat room. John Jester, one of our super sub co-hosts. John Jester's in there as well. Bill, hello to you, Bill. Stefan, good to see you, Stefan. Nana's in there as well, says good evening. And Sturman, hello, Sturman. Good to see Sturman in there. Masha, hello to you. Hope you are well. And also, across the pond, Evan. Hello, Evan. It must be stupid o'clock where Evan is at the moment, but good to see you all in there. And obviously, Neville Bounds is in there wielding the blue spanner of doom. Just
Always.
To keep on top of everyone. Don't forget, if you're listening to the show as an audio podcast, we are live every week on Wednesday nights here on YouTube, 7 p.m. And don't forget, if you haven't already done it, head over to YouTube, click the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when Matt has hit that go live button, because we'd love to have you in the chat room. So Armando's not with us this week, as you probably noticed. He's on his travels, but he has sent us a little video which some of you across the UK might recognise where Armando is.
Hello, PTUK family. Armando checking in here from Charlotte, North Carolina. Oh wait, that's not Charlotte, North Carolina. Here we are in the UK. The family has made it to the UK. We've been here for a couple days now. Won't be on the show tonight for a great reason. Is because we're having our British bake-off experience. We'll be making macarons and making bread and croissants and whatnot, because I've brought the whole family over and we are enjoying the beautiful Cotswolds here in the United Kingdom. So again, won't be on the show, but we are getting ready to record the 500th. So you guys are going to have some outstanding content here in the next couple weeks. Have a great show, and we'll check in with you all a little bit later.
Now I'm gonna do a Nev here, if I may. Is that all right, Nev? Do you mind if I do? Small point of order: croissants are not British. Just saying.
And I would say that a Macron is probably something to do with the French president.
Right. He is the French president, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely. They're going to bake him. Wow, that's impressive.
Oh,
Indeed.
could we say hello to the lovely Jenny? She's in the Peak District this week.
Oh, I say. Blimey, they're all over here. What's going on?
Honestly, brilliant. Oh,
indeed. Lovely. Hello, Jenny. Nice
Good to see you,
Yeah,
Jenny.
absolutely. Indeed.
right. We've got loads of news to get through. Also, a special story this week on an update on an incident that happened with an Airbus. So Andy's going to delve into that as well.
Oh.
So if all the team are ready.
As ready as we'll ever be.
The captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
So the first story this week comes to us from aerotime.aero. And, well, we haven't had this one come up for a while, guys, have we? Malaysia willing to reopen the MH370 search if compelling evidence is found. The official search for MH370, which disappeared 10 years ago, can you believe it, could be reopened if compelling evidence emerges, and the Malaysian government has said. The comments were made by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who is currently in Melbourne for the ASEAN, or Association of Southeast Asian Nations Regional Summit, which ends on March the 6th. He said, we have taken the position that if there is compelling case, the evidence that needs to be reopened, we are certainly happy to reopen the case. He was quoted as saying, and he says, whatever needs to be done must be done. On March the 3rd, 2024, Malaysian Minister of Transport Anthony Loke said he was in talks with the US marine robotics company Ocean Infinity to discuss a new search operation. He said, we are waiting for Ocean Infinity to provide suitable dates and will meet them any time that they are ready to welcome and come to Malaysia, Loke said. Malaysian Airlines MH370 was an international passenger flight that disappeared on March the 8th, 2014, en route to Beijing Capital International Airport from Kuala Lumpur Airport. Almost 10 years on, it remains one of the greatest unsolved aviation mysteries. One of the latest developments on the case saw scientists from the University of South Florida studying how barnacles attached to the MH370 flaperon could indicate where the plane had drifted. In September last year, aeronautical experts called for a renewed 10-day search of the aircraft after making a conclusion that the flight was an intentional one-way journey. So, could start up again. We all know that the cost of the last search, I think, Nev, it went into the billions, didn't it? I think the last search they made for this.
Yeah, the ocean's a very large place, isn't it? And as John Jester says, needle in a hayfield, as he says, or haystack, as we say here. It's a real problem. I think I'm in two minds about it. I really am. On the one hand, I want them to find it. I want them to find the remainder of the wreckage, but the cost associated and the danger involved with it is absolutely massive. And this is 10 years on now. Hard to believe it is 10 years, actually, isn't it?
Mm.
But yeah, I'm really torn. I haven't got a proper answer for this at all.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the fence as well, if I'm honest with you, Nev, because one part of me thinks, that you almost want it to be found so that the families can have closure and things like that. But on the other hand, you just think it has now been 10 years. If we do find it, do we really want to be sort of like disturbing it? Because essentially it's, you could argue it's now the final resting place, etc., etc. I don't know. I think if they could at least locate it, even if they decided to leave it alone, I guess that would be my preference.
And the only way they're going to solve this mystery is to locate the CVR and FDR.
I don't think there'll be any fit state after 10 years in the ocean, in deep ocean.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah.
They're encased to protect them against high G, but seawater, look what it does to ships and metal that's sunken. It's just PCBs in there. I don't think there's much hope for this, really. And if it did go in one piece, it'll have broken up and the currents will have taken it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? Mm.
Anyway, well, watch this space, I suppose, and see if they do start up the, search again. Anyway, moving on. Next story, Andy, you've got this one. And an update, really, on a story that we covered in the past.
Yeah, well, this was 4 years ago. This is from the FridayTimes.com, and this is the final report now into the 2020 PIA crash in Karachi. 4 years after PIA Flight 8303 from Lahore to Karachi crashed while attempting to land in Karachi, the full investigative report has been released. The massive 160-page report was released by the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board and the Aviation Division. It reviewed all aspects that led to the crash of the A320 in Karachi on May the 22nd, 2020, which left 97 passengers and crew dead. 2 passengers miraculously survived. The report stated that the plane was flying too high and fast as it landed at the Karachi airport. It was repeatedly warned about its height and offered to delay its landing and come around for a second approach, but the pilot disregarded the instructions. It landed once without any landing gear extended and dragged itself on the runway before taking off and attempting to land a second time with the landing gear down, but it never made it. The report contains a timeline and transcript of cockpit and air traffic control conversations gleaned from the flight recorder and other on-ground tracking methods. In the 4 minutes from when the plane was first asked about its excess height and told to delay its landing to when it made contact with the ground, the pilots were told 4 times about their height and to abort the landing before cleared to land on the 5th call, which was about a minute and a half before it made the first landing. The report said that it was too high when the aircraft entered the final leg of its journey. It was flying at over 7,830 feet when it entered the final 11 nautical mile segment when it was supposed to be at a height of around 3,000 feet. So it was over twice as high as it should have been. Realising they were too high for landing, the pilots put the plane in a dive to attain an altitude that would allow them to land. This, however, automatically cancelled the autopilot modes. A little bit of confusion here. The pitch got excessive. So at that point, the autopilot said, I've had enough, which, of course, upped the workload massively. And during this period, the landing gear was inexplicably retracted. Now, I've read the actual report on this as well, and there was so much conversation going on. Somebody retracted the gear and nothing was said, which is so unusual and so outside of standard operating procedure. The report suggests the landing gear was retracted manually, but there was no call-out or cross-check between the pilots. Even though the aircraft systems warned the pilots around 1.5 nautical miles from the runway about the landing gear being retracted, so that's the GPWS system will automatically do that, will tell you too low gear. When the plane was still at a height of 750 feet and 40 seconds from landing, the pilots decided to cancel the warning rather than heed it and put the landing gear down. At a height of around 365 feet and around 30 seconds from landing, a button to cancel the overspeed and landing gear warnings was pressed. I don't think you could do that. And the pilot put the plane down to land. By this point, the captain had taken over control of the aircraft. Instead of pursuing standard go-around procedures, given the plane had exceeded the acceptable parameters for landing, the pilots proceeded to land the aircraft in an unstabilized approach. Believing the landing gear was down, they put the plane nose down and attempted to engage reverse thrusts on the engines and push the brakes. The plane, though, made ground contact but without any landing gear. It dragged its engines around for over dragged its engines on the ground for over 2,000 feet for 18 seconds, causing flames to erupt from under the plane and severely damaged the engines. 18 seconds is a very long time. It even caused an engine fire warning to be triggered in the cockpit for 7 seconds. The first officer realised what had happened and told the captain to take off about 14 seconds into the plane being dragged on the runway. The captain listened to the first officer, disengaged the brakes, well, there were no brakes, and pushed the thrust to take off. 4 seconds after the aircraft started gaining altitude, the pilot told the tower that they were going around. Curiously, when the plane climbed to 140 feet, the pilot tried to lower and raise the landing gear. However, the plane's computers did not register a lock position, whether up or down. The plane then managed to climb to 2,600 feet, which I think is exceptional considering the damage to the engines. But then its engines started to fail after it was told to adjust its direction and attempt to land again. The engines had suffered severe damage while being dragged on the runway, losing electrical current and oil pressure. Around 30 seconds later, the Karachi airport asked the plane whether the plane was losing altitude. At this, the first officer requested clearance to fly the plane at 2,000 feet. As they attempted to manoeuvre the aircraft to determine the condition of the engines, the captain asked the first officer, "You had selected engine number 2 to idle, whereas engine number 1 was gone." The first officer responded with, "Yes." A few seconds later, warnings of engine stall, sounded in the cockpit, and the captain asked his first officer about the noises, who responded by asking the captain to reduce the speed. This goes on a lot, but essentially they then lost the number 1 engine. The number 2 engine was at idle but still producing thrust initially, and they eventually stalled and crashed into the city just short of the runway. It's just an absolute calamity of an approach.
On the underside of those engines, isn't that where the auxiliary gearbox is located, isn't it?
Yes, on the sides underneath. I apologise for the dog as well in the background. He's twisting away. They're all of the main generator equipment, everything is on the outside of the engine. So when they hit the ground, it will have just destroyed all the connections, the pipework, everything.
Wow.
Frightening, really, isn't it?
I can't even... I mean, the captain has got 17,000 hours of experience of piloting command.
Yes, but the report suggests as well that he was very authoritative and the first officer maybe didn't feel he could challenge him.
Is that a common? Again, forgive my naivety here, but I mean, part of me wants to think that that's not something that exists these days. But is that sort of? I guess it must still exist. Otherwise, we wouldn't perhaps have a scenario like this potentially. But
in some parts of the world, yes, it does still exist with the sort of power gradient. In Europe, no. With crew resource management, it's trained differently, and the captain may be ultimately responsible, but it's a whole crew effort and everybody's opinion is valid.
Yeah, which is definitely a better way to do things, I think, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because the first officer could know something you don't know as the captain.
or might have seen something that you've perhaps missed, or
Exactly.
that's yeah.
Yeah, so just looking at some of the detail which you've already read out, it was flying at over 7,830 feet when it entered the final 11.4 nautical mile segment, when it was supposed to be at a height of 3,000 feet.
So they will have had a lot of energy. They were also at over 200 knots, about 220 knots.
So
That's way
massive
too fast.
nose pitch down to try and capture the glide slope.
Yeah.
But you can't, if you want the definition of an unstabilised approach, that's probably not a bad starting point. Is
That
it?
would
Yeah,
be it. Yes.
this approach should have been given up around 20 to 30 miles before the runway. They should have held, got the height off, and then tried.
Yeah. God. Unbelievable.
Just
We
horrendous.
have a reflection briefly about the 18 seconds that they were on the runway without landing gear. 18 seconds. If you imagine trying to count that and how long that is,
That's
and
quite
how
a long
long
time, isn't it?
your decision-making processes would be taking during that time to have continued along then. But also, kudos to the aircraft that it actually still managed to produce enough thrust that they could take off again. I find that absolutely extraordinary.
I had to think about what I would do if I end up in this situation. If I knew it had settled onto the engine pods, I probably wouldn't have tried to go around. I'd have probably just sat tight and seen what happened.
It would stop quickly, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of friction there. And as soon as you leave the runway, those engines would dig in. Because, of course, once you get below 100 and something knots, you'll have no directional control because the rudder authority will be gone. And then you're just at the behest of Sir Isaac Newton then. But yeah, it's a difficult one as well. 18 seconds, it sounds like a long time. When something like that's happening, you try and decide what to do. It's not a long time.
No.
But still, further in the report as well, they weren't applying company procedures. They weren't operating with standard operating procedures. I mean, the pilot flying, the first officer, he was flying and operating the radio, which is not what you'd expect. So the captain sort of just wanted to sit there.
Wow. There's so much wrong with this story, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a horrible incident that hopefully we'll learn from the industry.
Can't believe it's 4 years ago
Yeah.
this happened. Anyway, moving on. Nev, you've got the next story, and another sad story, actually, this one.
Yeah, it is. This is on flightglobal.com, and it says that investigations are underway after a search and rescue configured Sikorsky S-92 helicopter operated by Bristow Group came down off the coast of Norway. Bristow says that the helicopter, which was Lima November Oscar India Juliet, was involved in an accident at about 1940 CET, around 9 nautical miles west of Bergen. All 6 occupants of the aircraft were safely rescued and transported to hospital. The aircraft is contracted to a civilian customer and was conducting a training mission at the time of the incident, Bristow says. Sikorsky adds, "We're aware of the incident and stand ready to support the investigative authorities and our customer. Safety is our top priority." Met information for the Bergen area shows winds of 18 knots gusting to 28 from the south-southeast and visibility of around 6 nautical miles. Syrian Fleet's data recalled the aircraft as a 2012 built example, previously operated by Bristow on behalf of the UK Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. Its registration then was Golf Mike Charlie Golf Charlie. It was transferred to Bristow, Norway in 2023. With the offshore oil and gas industry reliant on the S-92 heavy twin for long-range transport missions, operators in the sector will be waiting nervously for the initial investigation findings in case that there are immediate implications for their fleets. Yeah, of course, this is very much a workhorse of the North Sea, isn't it? And the training that the crews go through, both the flight deck crew and the passengers, is extensive indeed. But there's obviously a big moment here, and until we see the initial report, there's not much more to say on it at the moment. But thank goodness that they were all rescued.
Nick was saying in our group chat there, is this the plane that is this the helicopter that Rory flies?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It's
Well,
the
the
rescue.
platform though. They. I mean, these things go up all the time from just up the road from us, Matt. You know, at Norwich, they fly these out of there.
They do.
And this
offer
is
the
why
rigs,
this is why the training is so important. Because if they hadn't had the training, everybody might not have got off that helicopter.
Isn't that true? Yeah.
It's a dangerous game, flying out to rigs.
It is.
And everybody knows the risks, so it's really good that they rescued everyone.
As you say, sort of shows it works in many ways, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Done both my 2 weeks worth of work experience when I was at high school at an offshore helicopter
Did you?
place at Beccles. Yeah, done
Gosh.
both my 2 weeks worth of there, and got 2 flights as well. One offshore to a rig. Had to put the suit and everything on. Which
Can you imagine? They'd never, ever in a million years be allowed to do that now, would they?
No, I flew out to one of the North Sea platforms on a Sikorsky S-61.
Nice.
But yeah, obviously, as
Quite the
Matt
experience,
knows,
to be fair.
yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing, and for me, obviously being at high school, that was quite the thing to be on board that and sit down and strap in. And no, I will say noisy, incredibly noisy.
Yeah,
oh my
I
word,
bet.
noisy on those helicopters. But yeah, quite the experience.
I bet.
Next story from Reuters.com. FAA, bad news for Boeing. FAA gives Boeing 90 days to develop a plan to address quality issues. I think we're already eaten into a bit of that 90 days, haven't we? Boeing must develop a comprehensive plan to address systemic quality control issues within 90 days. The head of the US Federal Aviation Administration said last Wednesday, after a mid-air emergency last month sparked renewed safety concerns. Boeing must commit to real and profound improvements, the FAA said. Making foundational changes will require a sustained effort from Boeing leadership, and we are ongoing to hold them accountable to every step of the way with mutually understood milestones and expectations. Boeing CEO Dave Culhane said in a statement that their leadership team was totally committed to addressing FAA concerns and developing the plan. He said, "We have a clear picture of what needs to be done." Culhane said Boeing will develop the comprehensive action plan with measurable criteria that demonstrate the profound change that Administrator Whitaker and FAA demand. Bloomberg News reported last week that the Justice Department is scrutinising the Alaska Airlines MAX 9 blowout to determine if it falls under a 2021 deferred prosecution agreement over 2 fatal MAX 8 crashes back in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. Boeing said last month the Department of Justice was currently considering whether the company fulfilled its obligations under the agreement, and the Justice Department declined to comment last week, and Boeing shares again fell by another % in after-hours trading. Boeing's production rate has been capped by the FAA and its operations closely scrutinised by lawmakers and customers following the January the 5th Alaska Air incident. The new FAA statement raises fresh questions about how long the production freeze rate will last. Whitaker said that Boeing's plan must incorporate forthcoming results of the FAA production line audit and findings from an expert review panel report released last Monday. The report, which had been commissioned back in 2023, was highly critical of the company's safety management process, saying that Boeing suffered from inadequate and confusing implementation of the components of a positive safety culture. Boeing last week abruptly removed Ed Clark, the head of its troubled 737 MAX program, as part of the management shake-up, and the FAA said last week that Boeing must take steps to improve its safety management system, or SMS program. Sounds a bit archaic, doesn't it? SMS, which it committed to in 2019 and combined it with a quality management system to create a measurable systemic shift in managing quality control. And the story goes on. Basically, Boeing need to, how do we put this? Get things right going forward for a considerably long time.
Yeah. Part of me is surprised almost that this hasn't been issued sooner, if you see what I mean. I mean, there are obviously some grave concerns about the events of the last, well, let's say sort of, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? I mean, it's been I can understand why people are properly nervous about it all, and yet they're a big manufacturer, aren't they? I mean, it's worrying, I think.
In my opinion, the DOJ are giving them too much of a length of rope. They have done for several years now. Okay, it's one of America's biggest exporters. I get that, but come on, this is safety. This is just another item in the Mac story that's just rolling on and on.
Yeah, it is. It is, and of course, with the instance of the doors and things as well. I mean, this is just adding, further fuel, as you say, to an already challenging market, shall we say?
Boeing just needs to scrap the 737. It's an outdated airframe. It's going to cost them a lot of money to replace it, which I'm sure the US government will back them up with, because they seem to be backing them up on everything else, not getting political law. So just scrap it and make something modern.
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking, don't you, Nev? Bring back the, what we were talking about earlier.
The 7.5. You mean?
I thought you were going to say bring back the TriStar. I was going to start throwing stuff at you.
That would be lovely. But no, seriously though, I think that we've talked about this before. They should have re-engined the 7.5 and kept that frame, because we all know that is a well proven and very good airframe. I mean, even you'll agree, Andy, the 7.5.
The 7.5 is one of my all-time favourites. I wish I could have flown it. But at the time that the production line ended in 2006 for the 7.5, it wasn't an in-demand type. But now, as time has progressed and airlines have realised the 757-321 size with a new engine is the perfect airframe to do a lot of stuff with, it's too late, because Boeing literally shut down that line, broke up all the jigs, scrapped everything.
Yeah.
So it would have to be a brand new airframe.
I mean, there's going to be no quick fix to that, is there either? I mean, I guess there must be some plans in the works for some form of sort of like new aircraft, because I'd like to think that development is occurring all the time. But
you'd hope so.
Yeah, indeed. But will they be developing are they already thinking and in the process of developing a 737 replacement?
You'd hope so.
I think the problem as well is that because engine manufacturers have done such an excellent job in providing on-frame reliability and also really good fuel burn figures. I mean, these new LEAP engines and all the rest of them, I mean, they are phenomenally good in terms of the running costs. And of course, it's the maintenance costs which is the key thing for the operators. That you have to have sensible or improving situation with regard to fuel and maintenance costs. And it was I would imagine, a relatively straightforward to adapt those engines onto the A320 and A321 series, but because of the landing, how short the landing gear is on the 737, and many other things as well, which is why they had to make the engines higher and move forward. A whole load of stuff had to be changed to accommodate it. But there's some things that have slipped through the quality control, we'll be putting it mildly here, and these have resulted in fatalities in 2 cases and a very close call, I would suggest, with the Alaska.
Yes,
yeah.
Very much agreed.
So moving on to the next story, Andy. And,
yes.
We covered a story similar to this a few weeks ago, and I'm guessing that someone's got something against Airbus.
Well, yes, this one's from aerotime.aero, and it's Dominican Airlines Sky Cana A321 shot at and damaged in Haiti. An A321 has been shot at while arriving at Port-au-Prince Airport, damaging the aircraft fuselage. The aircraft, operated by Avion Express Malta on behalf of Skycanner, nevertheless managed to land safely with no reported injuries amongst those on board. Under the flight number Sierra 65217, the jet originated from Santo Domingo Airport in the Dominican Republic. The aircraft was heading for Port-au-Prince International Airport, where it was due to land 40 minutes later. However, as the aircraft landed and taxied towards the parking apron, it sustained damage from gunfire that had broken out in an area surrounding the airport boundary. Local reports state that ongoing disruption between rival gangs with territories situated around the airport were likely to blame. And it goes on saying the violence which targeted local police facilities and an auto dealership housing the Jamaican consulate started early in the morning on February the 29th. An armed gang knocked down the perimeter wall of the National Police Academy, and by mid-morning the attacks had spread and shots were fired in the vicinity of the city's main airport. Wow. Well, I suppose it's not too bad that it was on the ground, and it's very good that nobody's been hurt. But firing guns around an airport is never a good idea.
No.
No, I mean, this is the, as I say, the crumb of comfort, I suppose, is the fact that it wasn't shot at while it was flying. I guess. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no good time to fire at an aircraft. I know, but it's, I suppose it was on the ground, and it wasn't. Well, I suppose it was still stray bullets, wasn't it? Because they weren't aiming for the aircraft. It just happened to be.
The interesting thing about this aircraft is it's an ex-Monarch aircraft as well.
Oh no.
Gosh, it's quite old. It's nearly 20 years old as well. So
perhaps they thought that Al was still on board, and they were trying to.
Absolutely, the reputation has preceded it. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Speaking of the old fellow, we have to wish him a happy birthday. It was his birthday this week.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep. Another year older.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
He was showing us pictures of Welsh cakes as well on the on the X, formerly known as Twitter.
Oh.
Earlier on, I noticed. So yes, and well, his table's never in op, is it, on his aircraft?
Goodness me, no. Can you imagine? There'd be complaints left, right, and centre if that was the case. Yes.
Well, in fact, the plane wouldn't be going.
No, quite, absolutely. Where is my catering? Yes.
Yeah.
Quite right.
Nev, you got the next one. Looking back on a story we've covered in the distant past, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is on simpleflying.com, and it says that former Antonov CEO could face 15 years in prison after AN-225 destruction. Well, the destruction of this aircraft, which set more than 120 world records during its distinguished career, was a meaningful event in the conflict's early days for multiple reasons. As well as marking the destruction of one of Ukraine's most impressive engineering feats on a symbolic level, there was also a strategic side. Specifically, the six-engine aircraft's demise formed part of a wider onslaught on Kiev's Hostomel airport, which Russian forces were temporarily able to gain control of. Whilst Ukraine regained control just over a month later, the Russian hold on the facility was of strategic significance due to its proximity to Kiev. However, the country's forces eventually withdrew from the area towards the end of March. Nonetheless, by this time, the damage to the legendary Antonov AN-225 had been done, and with the photograph, I don't know if Matt's got a shot of this, depicting the extent of the damage to the famous Ukraine heavy airlifter. A year later, former Antonov director Serhiy Bischoff was charged with negligence over the destruction. Since then, the Security Service of Ukraine has been hard at work conducting an investigation into the destruction of the AN-225 and the wider Battle of Hostomel Airport as a whole. Last week it was confirmed it had gathered indisputable evidence of the guilt of the former Antonov officials, the CEO and the head of the aviation security unit in the matter. further explaining in a statement, according to the investigation, on the eve of Russia's full-scale invasion, the suspected officials did not allow the National Guard of Ukraine to enter the territory of the airport to prepare for its defence. To do this, in January and February 2022, they ordered to block the access of the Ukrainian military to the territory of the facility. On this basis, the Security Service of Ukraine has alleged that the criminal actions of the ex-officials led to the temporary seizure of a strategically important airfield during the battles for Kiev and the destruction of the AN-225. It has thus charged Antonov's former CEO and the head of the Aviation Security Unit with obstructing military activities, with the pair facing up to 15 years in prison. Certain reports also suggest that the officials' actions prevented an evacuation flight that could have seen the AN-225 removed from the airfield before the invasion. Indeed, the Kiev Post reports that according to Dmitry Antonov, the aircraft's commander, its crew were prepared to fly the jet to Leipzig but never got the order to take off. The Kiev Independent via Yahoo News notes that the damage amounted to $227.8 million. I'm not sure we'll ever get to the bottom of this story.
No.
But my goodness me, that was a spectacular moment, wasn't it? That's for sure.
Here it is in its glory days, by the way, very kindly sent to me by Jonathan Warner just now. I mean, it's a
incredible aircraft.
It's an outstanding looking bit of kit, isn't it? At the end of the day, I mean, some people think it's quite ugly and stuff, but there is something quite sort of. It's all the ridiculous amounts of wheels and all that kind of thing. What sort of payload was this thing capable of carrying? Because it was cargo, wasn't it? It wasn't a passenger variant or anything, was it?
Well, it was designed originally to carry the Russian version of the Space Shuttle, the Buran.
Right. Okay.
That's why it's got the lumps on top. That's where the orbiter will be positioned.
Oh, okay.
I
Love
don't
that.
actually know what the payload capability is of that aircraft.
I mean, I feel like it should have been quite huge just by the sheer. I measure it by the fact that it's got 6 engines and 80,000 wheels. It sort of rather implies that there's plenty of sort of like
just had a quick look on the Googles.
Yes,
it's a max payload of 551,150 pounds. So yeah, a lot.
It's quite a big number, isn't it?
250 plus ton.
Because there's still a model of this that wasn't finished. I think, if you remember, Neb, I think we talked about it on the show before. There's one of these, an AN-225 number 2 that's in a hangar somewhere. In this one of them ones, they didn't it was kind of half built but wasn't finished.
It's in a hangar at that airport.
Ah, right.
The remaining bits of it, yeah. But they'd have to do a lot of work. But I think they're planning to build it anyway, aren't they? Because they've got it there.
Yeah.
Just
be nice to see it again.
When this horrible conflict's over.
Indeed. Sooner the better.
Now, next story. Now, you're penned to do this one, Nev. I don't know whether you want to take this one. This is right up your league.
Well, I'm all for a bit of luxury when it comes to aircraft interior fit-out, that's for sure. On this website called supercarblondie.com.
Beg your pardon?
One I'm particularly familiar with. I was a bit worried about what the content of this website might be, but
Don't look at it on the work computer, Nev. That's probably the best advice I can give.
Yeah, no, we don't want HR.
No. We don't want an email now, do we?
No. But it does say that despite being designed to carry 280 passengers, an unnamed billionaire turned this particular Boeing 787 into a palace in the sky. It might have been designed for that number of passengers, but the 787 is perfect for this secret billionaire owner. Costing $350 million, the private jet is far more than just a skybound runaround. In fact, with a spacious lounge furnished with Italian marble, an office and luxurious private rooms, and even a gym, it's a veritable palace in the sky. Award-winning Washington-based US company Greenpoint Technologies is a premier business jet completion centre. For the right price, it offers its uber-wealthy private clients, governments and heads of state custom aircraft interiors. During its 35 years in the field, they've worked closely with Boeing for over 20 years and know their aircraft inside out. Their conversions are both ambitious and opulent, like the world's first VVIP Boeing 747-8 that took private jet opulence up a gear and skywards. Well, back to this stunning jet and its modern interior, finished with the best materials money can buy. The anonymous owner has even requested an onboard gym so that they could keep moving whilst on the move. Greenpoint explained that it's partnered with the client to convert the interior of the 787-8 into a sophisticated executive cabins. The VVIP interior features open living space and distinct private rooms. The Grandmaster Suite includes its own lounge and office, finished in the final Calcutta Borghini marble, book-matched American walnut, and hand-tufted carpet. Embossed hand-tipped leather seats and glossy piano black tables also feature, but I bet you get lots of finger marks on them. But it's a metallic glass tile wall in the main lounge that's really changed the game. It's the first of its kind on a 787. But the real unique selling point of the aircraft is its vaulted ceilinged gym, boasting a full-size treadmill. It's specially designed for working out under the threat of turbulence. Free weights may have proven a little risky. Greenpoint rose to the challenge, however, optimizing space and overcoming all of the associated safety concerns.
It looks like an amazing space, to be fair. I mean, that is the ultimate in sort of like... I mean, and I suppose because it's a 787, it's, you know, it's just big, isn't it? You know, you've got those lovely little chairs. I say little. It's just like... This thing's got a talent. It's got marble and granite. This stuff doesn't. This stuff doesn't weigh 3 ounces. This weighs. Yeah, but if it's only going to be carrying, you know, a maximum of 20 people, I think there's plenty of space to, you know, there's plenty of weight capability available. If you've only got to worry about 8 people's suitcases.
If you'd done a long haul flight in this and got to the other end and felt and said, I don't feel, you know, I feel rough.
Yeah.
Then you've got problems.
I mean, if I had the opportunity to be able to fly around on an aircraft like that, I don't think I would have a problem or any form of nervousness when it comes to flying. I think I'd be able to
get
get
a cleaner on board,
right?
Because, like Nev says, that would the fingerprints everywhere, and they would absolutely wild.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Either that would be wandering around with a like a chamois, like just like buffing the table every time you go quick.
Do you know how much that cost? Do you know how much that costs? Get a coaster on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Coasters all the way. That's
Imagine being on that treadmill though, and all of a sudden turbulence hits.
I mean, that's the first thing I'd rip out, certainly, if it was mine. It's just like waste that. I'd turn it into a wine cellar or something.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Somewhere to keep your fine vintage, you know, but special ones that fly well, you know.
I know exactly what Andy would have on board. He'd have a pub.
Yeah. We've already got one. There is a bar at the back, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'd turn the underneath, the holds, into a bar.
Oh, I say. What?
Have yourself a nice little cosy cabin.
Yeah, I suppose the issue there would be having to pressurise it, though, wouldn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, the holds are pressurised.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they weren't.
No.
Guess show what I know. Still haven't learned anything after all these years.
Quite a few comments in the chat room referring to the fact that this is definitely Nev through and through. This.
Oh, is it? Right. I mean, it's the ultimate in seat 1A, Nev, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I will have that gym taken out, though. That's an
I'm glad we're in agreement there, Nev.
I'm thinking of weight saving, and we could put a better bar in there, probably.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. A nice wine cellar or a nice whiskey collection, beautifully displayed.
Oh.
Yeah? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, absolutely. Shall we move on, please? I'm dribbling.
Move on. I'm getting thirsty now for a Guinness. Anyway, Last story in the pile this week is coming to us from Armando. He sent us in the last story for this week, and this was one we were going to show last week, but we didn't have time. So this is all about the Piper Rudder AD, tarnishes, processes, and AOPA contends.
So this story, while I added into the show, is not a huge groundbreaking story, but I did so because a lot of our listeners are actually aircraft owners. Now, this was evidence when we had our fly-in a couple years ago at Seething Airfield. And on the show, we often talk about emergency airworthiness directives, mostly for those big airliner types, especially Boeing over the last few years and the last few weeks. And this is a bit of an example of some of the same challenges that small aircraft owners have to deal with. Now, over the last few weeks, aviators, mechanics, and some of these big groups like AOPA, EAA, VAA, the Vintage Aircraft Association, and even some other smaller general aviation groups have called for the FAA to rescind a proposed airworthiness directive that would affect nearly 31,000. Think about that, 31,000 vintage Piper aircraft. They are citing a lack of evidence of risk, an unjustifiably broad scope, and a broken FAA process. Now, the EAA and the EAA Vintage Aircraft Association, the VAA, each filed comments opposing a sweeping airworthiness directive, which affects almost every high-wing vintage Piper aircraft. This would require the rudders built of 1025 carbon steel to be replaced with new rudders made from a 4130 low alloy steel. And Nick can talk about the differences between those two. That the FAA, like I said, estimates that nearly 31,000 aircraft would be affected by this. Now, this airworthiness directive is rooted in an NTSB report documenting the failure of rudder posts of two modified seaplanes in Alaska. One was a PA-12 Super Cruiser, the other a PA-14 family cruiser, as well as over 5 other cases over a 44-year period documented by the airworthiness concern sheet process. Now, the aircraft documented by the NTSB report had aftermarket 160 horsepower engines and rudder-mounted beacon lights, which likely altered the stresses on the rudder posts. Now, the events in question both took place in Alaska, one in 2020, one in 2021, involving these rudder component failures in flights that ended with both aircraft landing successfully with dog-eared rudders and a broken rudder post. These types of rudders have 3 posts on them. Now, the Short Wing Piper Club noted that there is no evidence or reports of broken rudders. The results between a broken post and a failure of the rudder assembly are significantly different. The rudder assembly's operation was significantly reduced, but it did not fail. That's according to that club. The broken post did not result in an accident, rather reports of incidents, which is a minor sort of reporting criteria. Now, that particular group, which consulted with AOPA Vice President Murray Hewling, who in turn cited the group's technical analysis and AOPA's comments, found faults with many aspects of the proposal, including the estimated cost, the lack of provision for acceptable repairs, etc., that the FAA put out. So what happens here is when the FAA receives something like this and they put out an airworthiness directive that the owners or operators have to comply with, they put out an estimated cost. This was significantly undervalued. They put out the cost as something like $1,000 or something like that. The AOPA offices reached out to the FAA, office responsible for this kind of airworthiness certification, and discovered that the system that they put into place a few years ago had dwindled to being almost non-existent because of whatever reason, probably COVID. AOPA is stepping up and is working with the FAA to reinstitute the ACS notification process to help ensure that this type of situation does not happen again. Now, for me, this would have directly affected my last airplane, that 1946 Piper PA-12 Supercruiser that we just sold. That airplane did have a navigation light mounted on the tail at some point in its life. It didn't come out of the factory that way, but that airplane was powered by a stock low power engine, a Lycoming O235, which is 115 horsepower. That would not have imposed the same stresses on the tail as these airplanes that are cited in this emergency airworthiness directive. Sure, $900 is what's going to cost the new owner for the rudder frame, but you have to get that. That's just literally a metal frame. You have to get that recovered, painted, mounted, documented, and it's a certified aircraft, so it all has to be done by an ANP and then inspected by an IA. All in all, this would cost the new owner of my airplane anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to accomplish. So again, not a huge groundbreaking story, but when you're talking about 31,000 airplanes possibly being affected, I think it's indicative of these kinds of things that, broad sweeping actions that the FAA sometimes takes. That's probably a little bit overkill. So I welcome your guys' comments to this FAA proposal.
I mean,
the worrying thing is it's all very well when you do have the ability to own these wonderful aircraft.
Yeah.
But obviously you do have to keep on top of things, and obviously you have to keep on top of all the what should we call it? Kind of like a product recall sort of thing that you get with a car.
Yeah.
Where the manufacturer
but also
says,
presumably the age of the airframe has got to be a factor into this as well. And I suppose you do run the risk of, I guess, if it is a commercial plane of some description, you can be pretty confident that it's being inspected regularly and stuff. I mean, I presume there is protocols. Andy, you may be able to correct me on this. I presume even for what I call GA stuff, privately owned, there must still be protocols in place for an appropriate level of maintenance to be sort of kept up.
Oh yes, all airframes have service intervals on their specified parts. Yeah,
and if you haven't complied with that, then your right to fly through the sky is revoked, if you like.
I guess so. I'm not fully versed in light aircraft maintenance, but I guess regardless of the size of the aircraft, you'd have a schedule of maintenance that's got to be kept up and certified.
Yeah,
and it's all cost.
Yep.
All costs, yeah.
Indeed.
So,
indeed.
Moving on to next part of the show, exciting. It's our caption this, just for fun, picture of the week this week. We post on our social medias. And this one was an interesting picture. Matt will pop up on the screen in just a moment. But we had quite a few comments on here about this. Nev, for the benefit of our audio listeners, what are we looking at here?
It's a bit of a modified Airbus A350, is it? Yes. And looks like it should be on the Edinburgh tram route rather than in the air. That's all I can say.
Indeed. That's
so kicking off from John this week, kicks off proceedings. John Falk says, Captain, the release button is not working.
Gordon says Airbus's all-new, all-electric airliners take to the air.
Andy, you got the next one?
Yeah, Darren Smith says Greta has a lot to answer for.
Okay, right.
Dirk says Airbus wins the race of being the first aircraft manufacturer to take advantage of the new electrified North Atlantic tracks.
ENATs, he's put in brackets. I love that.
Yeah. Bill says at Airbus you're going to get a charge flying in our new A350 SS Spitz and Sparken model with the world's first FUW, fly under wire power system.
Nice.
That was quite drawn out, but I get the point though, Bill.
Andy.
This one's from John Luke. Well, First Officer Nev Bounds, I think you're on the right track.
Yes.
Well, that's a frightening thought. You was a first officer.
Oh.
Well, I have had some previous experience in the right-hand seat.
Controversial.
Yes, you have. And I remember the beasting you got then from us.
Right.
And the video is still on YouTube.
Is it?
somewhere.
Oh, good lord! Right, okay.
Simon says, Airbus production line a bit busier than Boeing.
Yes.
Ooh.
Stuart says fly-by-wire.
Literally.
James Taylor says clearly a trolleybus A350.
A trolley bus. Okay, I quite like that.
Richard King, Airbus trialling the new Air Tram.
Very good.
Richard Leach says avoiding lightning activity has been removed from the crew manual and replaced with extra thrust can be achieved by flying through thunderstorms.
And another
by
one
powering
from
the
Richard
lines.
King. New line training simulator.
You see.
Very good.
You see.
Excellent stuff.
From the chat room, Richard E. Flag says fly-by-wire to zip-by-wire. Very good, Richard. And Richard Adams says Airbus temporarily suspends services while it works on its green credentials.
Right, okay. I
Very
mean, that's one way
good,
of doing
very
it, I
good.
suppose. Yeah, I mean, it is an A350E.
Yes, I did notice that actually on the fuselage. What do you reckon, Andy? Would you ever go at this one?
I mean, it doesn't give me much diversion options, does it?
No, a bit limited, aren't you? Yeah, absolutely.
The second I go off the lines, that's it. I lose everything.
Yeah. Yeah, not sure about that one. I mean, the cabling alone for this is just frightening. There'd be a lot of sag in the lines, wouldn't they? Especially over the water. It's just like,
Oh.
yeah, it wouldn't do for me. Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Right, moving swiftly on with the show then. Right, going to hand over to Nev to introduce this first very special part of the show this week.
Yeah, well, you may have heard that we've been in Dublin for a few days last week, and what a great experience it was. And I've got to thank so many people from the Mobility Now and Drone Summit that we attended last week. They were absolutely superb. They made us feel right at home, and we had a fantastic time interviewing probably about 20 people in the end. And also, Carlos and Matt C got invited up onto a panel discussion as well.
Oh, I know.
You can imagine the ego was through the roof.
Very
there.
much so, yes.
I
Carlos
had
was beside himself.
I had to put up with half an hour of videoing this thing as well. So, yeah, but so that was great. We had some superb evening events as well. But I want to say straight away, thank you very much indeed to our listener, Alan White, who helped us so much with the logistics, carting us around, some customs advice, all sorts of stuff. And it was absolutely superb. And he joined us on the Saturday night as well. So that was great. But let's first go over to, we started off in Dublin, and let's see what's happening over there.
So you join us here in Dublin for the Drone Summit 2024. Matt C is here with me, Matt Smith, and of course Mr. Barnes is with me now. Going to start off the first question here. Matt, you are looking rather damp.
Yes, contrary to popular belief, this is not the new style of merchandise that we've started with the two-tone shirt. I thought it would be a very good idea because whenever I've been to these things, and I'm always trying to put my coat somewhere or I leave it behind or something like that. So I thought, no, I'm not going to bring a jacket. I'm not going to bring a coat with me. At the airport at Stansted, when we went from the departure gate to the plane, what I can only describe as monsoon weather arrived, and that was it. Off we went. So we started off. So I was already regretting my decision slightly, and then we sort of seen on the forecast overnight that it was going to be a little bit like sleety this morning. That's not true.
And here's a picture of what the snow was doing this morning as we shot some stuff earlier.
Yes.
But yeah, I did not expect this weather, I must say. Amazing.
No. But we missed this in the UK. We don't have any snow this year in the UK. We
don't get snow.
We
though,
get
as you
snow.
say, you get snow.
We get snow. Yeah, but we're making up for it now here in Dublin. Now, Matt, you've joined us for the trip.
Yes.
This year, also with a two-tone shirt, but he is drying out. Drying out. Well, welcome. Well, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's been fantastic already, and it hasn't even started yet. So.
Having fun already, yeah. So we've just been and had a little wander around, me and Matt here. Now are some fantastic bits of kit here, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Consumer drones all the way up to some really cool looking military/commercial stuff. So hopefully we'll get to see a lot of that today. And it's very exciting netting behind us as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there's going to be some flying going on in here as well later in the netted area behind us here, which will be great to see. But honestly, if you guys could look that way, you could see through the windows. It is still snowing rather heavily here. But we're going to have a great day. We've got loads to see and do, and speak to some of the exhibitors here and speakers as well. And Nev, we've got quite the itinerary, haven't we?
We've got a lot to pack in, yes. We've got 5 or 6 interviews we're doing today, that's Friday, and then we're going to go and talk to some of the exhibitors as well. But more importantly, I've got some Pelicase envy, because I'm looking around the place here, and there's some very nice Pelican cases, which I might just go and have to look at.
I quite like the hard. I quite like the hard case there with the metal.
Yes.
Like it.
So we'll have a look at those a bit later on. But no, we're going to pack in a lot today and tomorrow. So very much looking forward to it. And thanks to you, Matt, for joining us as well.
Pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
So we're going to leave the two Matts here to dry out, and we're going to crack on with a great day here at the Drone Summit 2024.
Anyone found a hand dryer yet?
No. Let's hope we're dry by tomorrow afternoon anyway. Well, I'm joined here by Bob Foley, and he's going to give us some information about his company and what they do. So thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Matt. Good to meet you. So we're engineers with drones, and as the name suggests, we don't do weddings. We don't do any of the sort of, let's say, more artistic stuff. We generate extremely boring imagery, extremely boring data, but as an engineer, it's incredibly useful. So we do all the sort of land mapping, inspection stuff, utility inspections, point clouds, LiDAR, thermography, whatever it is. If it's technical and drones, we do it.
Fantastic. So can you give some examples of some projects that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, for instance, there's a lot of people looking at offshore wind in Ireland. They're trying to bring these cables ashore somewhere. So they've asked us to go and map a whole bunch of target sites, beaches and headlands and places like that. So we come in with the drone. Trying to map these places any other way is completely impossible. The drone just flies over, maps the whole area where of the foreshore where this cable could potentially come on site. We map it, we generate a set of deliverables, CAD files and whatnot, hand that to the client. They're very happy, and it's a perfect use case for drones.
Fantastic. And you were saying after doing a survey, you can even strip away trees and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So using something like LiDAR technology, so shooting a laser, well, a lot of lasers at the ground from the drone over a period of time, what you'll get is what's called a point cloud. With that point cloud, you can plug it into some software, and it'll see what is trees and what is bare earth underneath. Strip away all of the trees and vegetation and houses, and what you're left with is a perfect picture of the land underneath. So you can see detail like streams, old hedges that have been grown over, things like that. So you get a very clear idea of the actual topography of the land as opposed to the apparent topography.
Fantastic. So obviously you said the name engineers.
Yep.
What's your background? I assume you have some engineering background yourself.
Yeah, I do. Interestingly, I'm actually an aircraft engineer by trade, a licensed engineer. I was on 737s for quite a while. Been all over Europe doing that. I think I've certified, well, I don't know how many 737s in my career. I let that go probably about 6 or 7 years ago, transitioned over, and now drones full time. So I kind of come from that. I have a foot in both camps, let's say, manned aviation and unmanned aviation.
Lovely. And how did you find that transition? Was it something that was easy, or was it a big learning curve to come across unmanned?
It's actually quite simple and easy for me. One of the reasons I got out of manned aviation is because, let's just say, there's no such thing as a creative person in aviation. You don't come in the morning and say, guys, you know what, I'm going to put the wings on backwards today. Let's just see what happens, you know. Aviation and manned aviation is an extremely procedural situation and environment, and that's why it's so safe, and I recognize that completely, but I wanted to have a little more autonomy in how I do things, so I went with the unmanned side because it's still a little bit Wild West, still a little bit new, a lot of places and things you can be doing in it that are very safe, but let's just say not as regulated yet.
And we see there's different attachments. You've already talked about LiDAR.
Yeah.
You also have infrared, so you can see heat traces and things. What sort of example project would you need to use that on?
Sure, yeah. There's a number of different ways you can utilize it. So thermography is the core idea. So you're using thermographic cameras to see the emissivity of any given object. You could map an entire piece of land, which is a project we've done. You map an entire piece of land, come back, and you're looking for heat blooms of, let's say, something like deer or bird nests within the land. Same with looking at trees, for example. Another thing would be looking at solar panels. So flying over a solar farm, and then you're going to see dead cells, dead panels, dead rows, things like that, because a live solar panel will behave different to one that has defects or dead cells in it. So these are just some of the examples. We've also done things like we were training the Irish Coast Guard in general drone use and thermography and things like that. So instructing those guys in good practice around use of these technologies so they can put that to use in search and rescue.
Yeah, I guess search and rescue would be great when a grey sea, the heat would stand out very clearly for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, one of the most useful things in the world is a thermographic camera. Ask the Russians or the Ukrainians, I'm sure they'll tell you, they're extremely useful in finding people in what is otherwise a very difficult environment to find somebody.
Yeah, lovely. Unlike some operators, you don't use custom drones. You use a variety of generally available zones. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're a very practical company by nature. Because drones are a relatively new technology, there's a lot of emphasis on experimentation, bleeding edge, leading edge, all that sort of thing. But our clients are all engineers, and if anybody knows engineers, they know they're conservative people. They're people who want a system that can be repeated, that works, and they get a deliverable that they can utilize in their actual work. They don't care how it's generated, they want a good product generated. And so for that reason, we use all off-the-shelf products and products that actually have a demonstrated history of working. Mavic 3, M300, Mini 4, things like that. Just off-the-shelf working drones that can do the job they're required to do. We don't really go for experimental because our clients don't have the time, energy, effort, or budget to be dealing with some guy coming in and experimenting on what to them is a live project.
Yeah, you use proven technology, basically. And we have some examples here, don't we? This is the 3 here, is it?
Yeah, this one right now, Mavic 3 Pro, is one of the absolute beasts of the industry. Why? Because you get high-end optical zoom cameras, but in a very small and repeatable package. If I crash this tomorrow, I can have a new one within a few hours in the sky again. I don't have downtime for my client because they've put a lot of effort into getting me in there to do the work. But it's very deployable, very capable. It's allowed to fly in many places. It's just a great drone.
Very transportable. It's amazing how small it is considering the uses.
Exactly. I've just come off a campaign of pylon inspections for the ESB. This is one of the primary tools used. If this thing hits an electrical pylon, half of Dublin isn't going to black out. Yeah. An M300 could be a different story.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of accidents with helicopters and power lines, so this is actually removing the human risk as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Apart from €1,000 an hour minimum for a helicopter, not including the subject expert in the helicopter, removing the helicopter from pylon inspections and stuff like that is a huge benefit. And I've even spoken to ex-helicopter pilots who have conducted these missions, and they're like, yeah, it's better done with a drone. I mean, it's low-hanging fruit. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So if any of our listeners would like to get in touch or see more of your stuff, where can they find you?
Yeah, basically Engineers with Drones. I think you Google that, you'll find us, but engineerswithdrones.ie. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn as well, under Bob Foley with Engineers with Drones. You're going to find us everywhere you type that word. That's where we exist.
Excellent. And we'll put the links to that in the show notes as well, so if anyone wants to have a look in the show notes and you can have there. Thanks ever so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure.
Much appreciated.
Take care. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. So exciting. We had such an amazing time as well. And Nev, just remind us what the link was with that.
Yes, so if you want to know more about Bob's company, it's engineerswithdrones.ie. And very good example that was of how much we've learned over the last few days whilst we were there. We've got probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 interviews in total, which will play out over the coming weeks. But really interesting to talk to all sorts of people that are using it for different applications. In fact, most of the people that we met there were using drones and UAVs for professional and commercial applications, I would say, for the most part. But we learned a lot. We learned a lot about legislation and the regulations as well. That was a massive subject, and I definitely got the impression that it was quite a challenge, because the regulator and the people that write the legislation for this are almost on the back foot or trying to play catch up, because the technology is advancing so quickly that they can barely write the rules quick enough. But they've gone a long way to doing this, and the Irish, along with the UK CEAA and EASA as well, have done a great deal of work in a joint sense as well to write the rule book for this stuff. So no, it was absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to play out some more next week as well.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant. I think one of the things that was so lovely about that one as well, isn't it, is taking an already commercially available device and repurposing it, essentially by just changing the camera and the way that the information is sort of beamed back to you to give it a completely different purpose. And I love that.
Yeah, I, of course, loved the table that was opposite us that was selling drones. It was very tempting.
I am amazed you didn't bring one home with you. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, that would have been pushing the boundaries a bit too far, I think. Plus, the one that I really liked was in the four figure.
Of course it was. Yeah, expensive tastes. That's your word.
Yeah, yeah, it's expensive.
If you're going to do it properly.
Yeah. Well, that's very true. Has that ever been something that's interested you, Andy?
As I was just saying before, there's a DJI Mini 2 sat on my kitchen table for me to fiddle with for my wife's work this week.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know. It's nothing that's really interested me before, but once I start, I might get deep into it. Who knows?
Ooh. Space.
Like it a lot.
So we have got Nev's very excited about the next part of the show. As always, he's poised like a coiled cobra. Like a coiled cobra, he is. It is, of course, the military segment. We've got a few. Don't panic, Nev. We've got a few stories to go through this week. Nothing too painful. You'll be pleased to know. But we have got some good military stories this week. So, Matt, if you're ready.
Yes.
Thank you.
Nev will be the judge of that.
Left up bogeys 135, 50, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay. 108 bogeys.
First military news story this week, Canadian DefenceReview.com, and good news for Boeing. They're actually going to get some money.
What?
Boeing has been awarded a nearly $3.5 billion contract for 17 P-8A Poseidon aircraft. So the US Navy has awarded Boeing a $3.4 billion contract to begin manufacturing 14 of the P-8A Poseidon aircraft, the Royal Canadian Air Force, and 3 additional P-8s for the German Navy. They said, "We are proud to add Canada to the list of international P-8 partners, as well as to Germany's fleet of maritime patrol aircraft," said Philip June, Vice President and Program Manager for the P-8A program. The Poseidon is a proven aircraft with more than 600,000 flight hours that will serve serve Canada and Germany well into today's challenging security environment for decades to come, he said. Back in November last year, Canada announced its decision to acquire the P-8A Poseidon to replace its current fleet of CP-140 Auroras. The first P-8As for Canada is expected to be delivered, hopefully, if Boeing can keep up, in 2026. With the P-8 acquisition, Boeing's economic commitments to Canada have the potential to generate annual benefits of more than 3,000 jobs for Canadian industry and value chain partners, and at least $358 million to Canada's gross domestic product over a 10-year period. Canada's Team Poseidon includes CAE, GE Aviation Canada, IMP Aerospace and Defence KF Aerospace, also Honeywell Aerospace Canada, Raytheon Canada and Standard Aero. The team builds on 81 Canadian suppliers to the P8 platform and more than 550 suppliers across all provinces, contributing to Boeing's annual $4 billion economic benefit to Canada, and also, more importantly, supporting 14,000 Canadian jobs. They said our global customers require proven advanced capabilities to protect their countries, and the P8 provides that defence, said Vince Logson, Vice President International Business Development for Boeing Defence, Space and Security Global Services. Blimey, they have big titles, these people, didn't they? You know, I'm a warehouse manager, that does. Anyway, together with our partners, they said, we look forward to delivering this unmatched capability in addition to significant industrial benefits for Canada and Germany's aerospace and defence industries. Following the initial procurement of 5 P-8 aircraft back in June 2021, Germany added 3 additional aircraft, bringing the total number of P-8s for the German Navy to 8. The first aircraft will be developed in 2025, or delivered in 2025, to replace the country's fleet of P-3 Orions. So there we go. Good news for Boeing. Hopefully they'll make some money on their military side of the business as opposed to the commercial side, because I think that's not making a huge amount of money right now. Can
I be slightly controversial as a question here?
You're going to ask why hasn't Airbus dipped into this realm yet?
No. The question I was going to ask is, if you are given the problems that Boeing are having in the commercial sector, would you perhaps be a little bit nervous about your little Boeing product that you've got, like, in the military side of things as well?
This is based on the old 737. It's the NG family, so
right.
It's a definite, proven and working platform.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
I'm quite surprised there are 200 in service as well. I didn't realise they'd built that many already. It's quite impressive. But yeah, I think is it a 700 fuselage with an 800 wing?
That's
something like that. Yeah. God, I know something about the military. This is a shock.
Very exciting, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. I even know about my story today as well. I know that type of aeroplane.
I mean, what's going on? I don't understand.
It's a crazy day.
Talking about that, Andy, you've got the next story about our British Air Force.
Yeah, the next one's from the Telegraph, and it's the RAF is sending pilots to train abroad after engine problems cut air fleet in half. The MOD is spending millions on sending pilots to the US and Italy for training because of a lack of aeroplanes. Problems with the engines fitted to the Hawk T2 jets have resulted in less than half the fleet being available for training in the UK, and additional money has been found to train pilots abroad. A problem with the first stage compressor, a critical part of the Rolls-Royce Turbomeca Adore 951 engine, was first identified in 2022. As a result, the engine life was reduced from 4,000 hours to 1,700 hours, after which a major overhaul was required, thus halving the number of training aircraft available to the RAF. The engine problem has meant that an additional 9 trainee pilots are currently being trained in the US, joining 6 trainees who were there already. A further 12 pilots are already being trained in Italy. A report in the Times suggested the overseas programme has cost the taxpayer an additional £55 million. However, a defence source disputed this. It is not known how much of that sum would have been spent even if the engine problems had not occurred. The £55 million is for all overseas training in Italy and the US, and some is already being done, said the source. This is a pragmatic solution to the Hawk T2 engine problem. In written evidence to the Commons Defence Select Committee in June last year, the MOD said that the cost of the 15 pilots in the US and the 12 in Italy equates to £56.4 million. The MOD stresses this figure is for all overseas pilots training, and yes, we've just said that before. Training overseas has always been part of the MOD's pilot programme. The RAF regularly sends trainees abroad as an opportunity for students to broaden their training and development, as well as help to strengthen relations with foreign partners. The additional overseas training package was adopted by the defence chiefs as a way of managing the trainee pipeline. So it sounds to me like they've sent a few more people abroad. That's the only real difference.
I mean, if you want to analyse it that way.
But that is a huge reduction in service life of the engine.
Yeah.
So no doubt Rolls-Royce are probably paying quite a chunk of that anyway.
It's quite an old aircraft, training aircraft. It's been in service for quite a number of years. I'm surprised the RAF haven't decided to progress on something a bit more modern.
Yeah, but the Hawk's a good airframe, though, isn't it? It's a proven airframe.
Yes,
very true.
Nev, you've got the last story and something that you wouldn't want to be really blamed for or part of.
No, I can imagine the paperwork could be extensive on this one. It's on airandspaceforces.com, and it says that a US Air Force MQ-9 Reaper came close to being shot down by a German warship in a friendly fire incident over the Red Sea on February the 27th, US officials told Air and Space Forces magazine. The US Air Force MQ-9 was targeted by the German frigate Hassan as the drone was conducting a mission for Operation Prosperity Guardian, the US-led maritime operation that is protecting international shipping from Houthi attacks, US officials said. The German ship fired two missiles at the MQ-9, but they missed the drone. The UAV did not receive damage and continued to its mission, according to a US defense official. The episode points to the challenges in coordinating operating Property Guardian with the more recent European Union effort to protect shipping, which is Operation Aspides, which the Hassan has been supporting. The Iran-backed Houthis have mounted more than 45 attacks against vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden since mid-November, according to the Pentagon. No military vessels have yet been damaged, but approximately 15 commercial ships, including 4 US ships, have been impacted, says Major Pete Nguyen, a Pentagon spokesman. Yemen's internationally recognised government said on March the 2nd that the UK-owned Rubimar, a cargo ship carrying over 40,000 tonnes of fertiliser, sunk. Ships and aircraft deployed to the US Central Command region have been shooting down Houthi drones and missiles that threaten commercial vessels on a near daily basis. CENTCOM has also conducted strikes against Houthi military facilities in Yemen to try and preclude the Houthis from launching missiles or drones. Well, to support such efforts, 4 to 8 US and allied Navy ships are patrolling the Red Sea at any given time, the Pentagon says. Operation Aspides consists of 4 frigates, according to the European Union's naval force. US officials have not spelled out how the US coordinates and deconflicts the operations with Operation Aspides, but notes that the American military has lots of experience working with allies and partners. Gosh, this has been an ongoing thing for a very long time now. And of course, that area, if things start going wrong in that part of the world, that's a massive ongoing problem for shipping, cargo, delays to getting products into Europe, all sorts of things. So it's a really big thing. And there's no sign of it ending at the moment either, unfortunately, from what I can see.
No, it really is worrying times, isn't it, across the board currently?
Yep.
I'll tell you what, you wouldn't. Obviously, it's an unmanned. The MQ-9 is unmanned, but still, it's still not going to be very favourable if you shoot one down, being on the same side essentially, shooting down that kind of thing. It's going to cost a few quid anyway, but
definitely.
But it just proves though that their system can't be brilliant though because it missed.
I'm not sure that's what we should be focusing on.
Just saying.
Okay.
We got from the chat room there from Dirk saying a good number of US Germans made quite some fun of that incident. I bet they did. Yeah, I bet there was a chattering on the social medias about that. But
yeah, I bet.
So that's the last in the military news for this week on the show. So we're going to start to wrap things up. But Nev, you're obviously off on your hollybob soon, off to sun yourself for a little bit, getaway.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be that. The weather forecast isn't very good for Budapest next week. I'm there Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday with Mrs. Nev. I've been to Budapest once before, but she's not been before, so I thought it'd be nice to go out there and spend some of those Hilton points and some of those Avios points. But I'm looking forward to visiting. It's a lovely country and a lovely city as well. It's a very good walking city, I seem to remember too. So looking forward to that. I shan't be on the show next week, but I'll make sure we've got another interview edited and ready to play out for us on Wednesday from our events in Dublin for you.
So you're very much looking forward to that. The BA boys, Nev?
Yes, Terminal 3 this time. Because
what?
Because there's some flights that do go from Terminal 3, so I can try out things like the Cathay Pacific Lounge and places like that, which will be quite nice.
Yeah. So, what's the equipment of choice for that, Nev? Is that the your 320?
Oh, still 320. Yeah, I would imagine. But it's it's a nice country and a nice city. So I'm very much looking forward to going there. We're going down the night before actually to Heathrow because we've got quite an early flight. So. It's the Hilton Garden Inn for us.
Oh, lovely.
On Monday night.
Nice there too. Been there a few times.
Yeah, it is nice. Yeah.
Andy, what's in the planning for you next week? You got a busy week?
In the next week, I have got a lot of admin work to do this week. And then next week, I am all over the country. I'm in Manchester one day, then I'm down in Gatwick for a couple of days, then back home. Busy.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. No flying, just meetings.
Just meetings and stuff. Wow, living the dream then.
Yeah.
Nick, I'm guessing you're going to be delving in, or how is the project coming on with the new addition to the two-wheeled family?
Yeah, good, looking good. Got the V5 through the post this afternoon. So, I'm officially
the owner.
A second Ducati in my garage. It's quite nice.
A second? Oh, good Lord. Right.
But I'm quite looking forward to seeing my aviation buddies at the weekend.
Yes, looking forward to that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Indeed. Going to be a lot of fun, isn't it?
Mr. Smith, what's going on next week?
Work, radio, and also tomorrow, especially a little secret project is occurring that I've got to go to a meeting for. So quite intrigued to see what that's going to bring. Nothing to do with PT UK, unfortunately, but going to be fun. That's one way of doing it, I think. But yeah, no, like Nick, very much looking forward to weirdly, Nev, it's the first time in ages that we've, like last weekend, obviously, when we were all together, and we're all together again next week as well, including Armando, which is going to be great.
Yes, that's rather nice, isn't it? So yes, they're all getting together next week to record some of the content for our 500th show. So very much looking forward to that, and we should be showing that when it's time for the 500th show.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
And very exciting footage it will be as well.
Indeed.
Yes, I can guarantee you that.
Oh.
So
we don't do guarantees. No.
Oh, well.
We got the
money back. No money back.
Right.
They're going to say a big thanks to all the chat room this evening for joining us tonight. It's been great to see you all in there, the usual family members joining us on the show. And also big thanks to everyone who downloads the show as well as an audio podcast. It's always good. And it'd be great to hear from you as well if you want to get in touch with us. So, Nev, where can all our amazing listeners get hold of us?
Yeah, well, it's Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. Just search those platforms for Plain Talking UK. The WhatsApp number is +44 757 224 9166. That's +44 757 224 9166. You can email the show, podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and the website is www.planetalkinguk.com. Of course, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll get notifications when we go live, and then all you've got to do there is just search for Plane Talking UK on YouTube. Also, if you would like to help us with the costs of running the show, which last week was considerable, I have to say, you can go onto our website. There's a Patreon link on there, and also a what's the word I'm looking for? PayPal link as well. So that's great. Next week, well, actually, I'll give you a bit of a preview of this now. Actually, we've been very kindly sent some books by our good listener Sam Dawson. So we're going to be putting another competition together again shortly to give those away. We've got some really excellent books he's very kindly sent us as well. And I've just been sent a new pamphlet from Grub Street Publishing about military history, what the books they've got coming up as well. That arrived in the post today too. So we'll see what comes through the post from them for us to review and for us to give away too.
Love that.
Yes,
Love
looking
that.
forward to that. So that's it. That's where we're going to bring episode 493 to a close. Going to say thanks to Nick for all your hard work this week. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Very kind. And also thank you again to our super sub co-host, the wonderful Andy, for joining us as well. Thanks for that, Andy.
Pleasure, as always.
Excellent. We'll let you get back to your pub, because I know it's
Thanks, yes.
in there. That's it then. So have a great weekend. Have a great rest of the week, whatever you're up to. And don't forget to tune in next Wednesday for our next live show. So from my studio here at home, from the Master Suite studio where Matt is, from Nev's glorious studio, from Nick in his home studio, and from Andy in the pub studio. We'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. Say goodbye, Nev.
See you. Take care. Have a good one.